We specifically know that several industries in our country, including the iron industry, the cotton industry, that is the textile industry, and the shipbuilding industry, the three industries on which the bedrock of our economy in the last 1,000 years were resting, they were crippled, they were decimated by innocuous tax regimes, what we call the tyranny of taxation. The ancient zinc ore mine at Jhawar, 30 kilometers from southwest of Udaipur, has revealed C14 dates of timber such as 430 plus or minus 100 and 380 plus or minus 50 before the Common Era. Lays to the rest the argument of Chinese giving us the knowledge about the zinc refining, and subsequent papers after A.K. Bishwas and few papers before A.K. Bishwas also lays credence to this point. Namaste. I, at the outset, thank Dr. Vinod and Dr. Prasad and congratulate them for having curated this wonderful Dhara event on Bharatiya Dhatu Shastra and for having given me this wonderful opportunity to share a few of my thoughts and work on specifically the zinc metallurgy, as this session is devoted for non-ferrous metallurgy. I also like to thank the organizers for having arranged the plenary lecture by Professor Indraneel Manna, who gave us a bird's eye view about different metallurgical heritage as well as current state of the arts and the needs for our country, and laid the roadmap, and in which he asked a very poignant question about what should be our thought processes when it comes to the next 25 years. That why are we still a developing and not yet a developed country? And he, of course, showed us some data from 1947 onwards. Taking liberty of the time given to me, because that lecture kind of picked my brain, and I thought of sharing a few minutes on that before going into the subject proper. And I wish to quote from a paper which was published back in 1858. And this is statistics on the statistics of Indian revenue and taxation, authored by Frederick Hendricks in the Journal of Statistical Society of London, published in 1858. And I would like to draw the attention of the listeners, and particularly Dr. Manna. We specifically know that several industries in our country, including the iron industry, the cotton industry, that is the textile industry, and the shipbuilding industry, the three industries on which the bedrock of our economy in the last 1,000 years were resting, they were crippled, they were decimated by innocuous tax regimes, what we call the tyranny of taxation. See, in this paper, I had come, and there were quotations that I had earmarked. I just wish to quote, which is specifically relevant with respect to the taxation that this author reports in 1858. I quote, "The problem is not simply the raising of a larger revenue. This was solved by the old Mohammedan sovereigns who found ways of levying a larger amount than the present revenue of India upon a smaller territory from probably a less population and certainly with commercial and fiscal circumstances inferior to those which now exist. But the real problem is to do away with the exhaustive illusion of the balance of trade and theory, the exhaustive social condition of the people of India. To accomplish this, the illusion of balance of trade theory must be entirely swept away. It's not a question of the precious metals. For thousands of years, India has absorbed silver and gold to an extent which has alarmed the section of ancient and modern bullionists to whom these two metals are exclusive incarnations, as it were, of wealth." So you can see the lamentation of this particular author, who, on one hand, of course, praises the metal heritage of India through this bullion, tiny aspect of bullion, but he is writing this as a tax report in the statistical review and calling forth for even higher tax regime what the Mohammedans had levied for the last 700 years. So one of the reasons why, when Professor Manna was asking to retrospect and ask the question, why are we still the developing countries? I think the threshold or the psychological, or what we call the hangover of the colonialism, has still not gone. Vis-a-vis the tax regime still continues to perhaps not incentivize, but penalize the certain sector of the industry. So with that note, I would like to continue with what I had come and prepared for, specifically talking about the non-ferrous metallurgy, and I'll be focusing on the zinc aspect, and Professor Manna had also touched upon it. When it comes to the metal zinc, its antiquity is slightly still dubious. Why I say dubious is that, fortunately or unfortunately, Europe dabbled into zinc only in the 17th century. And be that as it may, the knowledge flow, whatever has got crystallized in the lands of Europe and America, gets flown in the east direction, and we kind of just ape them, and our textbooks also reiterate the similar lines of thoughts. So when it comes to zinc, because Europe woke up much later to it, there is not much of emphasis laid even by our historians or the historians of science when it comes to the zinc metallurgy in India. We have our own internal problems about the linguistics as well as textual references when it comes to zinc's antiquity. On the one hand, we find references of zinc with its synonymous words in text that is available to us more or less in intact form from Arthashastra, where the word tutta appears to have been zinc. The reason I say is, today when we see the word, the Chinese, the zinc is referred to as tutanag, which is perhaps derived from the Tamil word tuttanagam. So this is to just impress upon the fact that the word tutta, which currently in the current Hindi or the North Indian usage is used for copper sulfate. Tutiya or tut is used for copper sulfate. But interestingly, back then, tutta referred to perhaps zinc. One of the other counter evidence we get is that in Persian, the tutta refers to zinc. And there has been in the Persian literature evidences of transfer of knowledge of zinc extraction from India to the Persian land, and their literature kind of captures it. So that's where we also infer that the word tutta perhaps existed during the Arthashastra period. But there is a doubt, and why I say perhaps is the process of extracting pure zinc in our own texts, in the evolution of our own metallurgy and chemistry text, we get to see direct evidence not before 8th or perhaps the 6th century in the current era. The metallurgists would know that zinc is kind of odd man out among the other metals because of its physical properties, particularly low melting point, because of which accessing the pure metal while processing it from its ore, it's really a tedious job. So in the texts of 6th or 8th, again the datings are not very equivocal. At least when we accept it at the face value of 6th or 8th century CE, we get direct references of extraction of zinc from its ore through a process which is called reverse distillation, about which I will be covering it in a few minutes. But this classification of ferrous and non-ferrous metallurgy is also a cultural import, I would say, because in our interaction with the world of metals and metallurgy, I think Indians have treated all the metals with equal importance depending upon where they had used these metals in their day-to-day life. One such example was this from the Rig Veda, where, of course, the linguists are still splitting the hair in terms of associating Vishphalaye dhane hite sartave pratyadhattam. Sadhyo jangam ayasim. The word ayasa in the Sanskrit literature is kind of still debated upon. Scholars have not still agreed whether this unequivocally refers to the word iron or it has a generic reference to metals. There are commentators who have taken it to be iron, and then they say, fine, there is a description about an iron armament or an artificial limb being given to this Vishpala during the war when this Vishpala had lost a leg. Coming to zinc, if you see, this was the Mason's survey in 1952. If you see here, among this 25, the zinc is at the rock bottom about its availability. And so you can clearly see the abundance as well as the difficulty in accessing this lesser abundant metal. When it comes to, again, the linguistic aspect, the way zinc was referred to as a metal in the Sanskrit literature, one example I gave you as Tutta. There are other references to it like Yashada, that which gives brightness. Yasham dadati Yashada. The Ya becomes Ja, that's why in some literature it is recorded as Jashada or Jasada. So there are more than one references within the Sanskrit literature over a different period of time of how zinc was referred to as. That again adds to certain confusion also, because people who are not aware of this socio-linguistic background will tend to have interpreted this or translated this in English in various forms. But all said and done, Europe did not know about it. Earlier, as late as 15th century, Paracelsus and Basil Valentin calls it as a bastard metal or a semi-metal, and they fail to recognize it as a metal because of its brittleness. And even our own historians of science, whom we hold in high regard, somebody like Acharya Prafulla Chandra Ray also, was of the belief that the knowledge about the zinc refining and zinc technology had come to us by the Chinese roots, or from the China it had emanated and come to us. But later day metallurgists and historians have kind of put this debate to by saying how the zinc technology had indigenously emanated from the country and how it had spread far and wide. For example, this paper, I quote Professor A.K. Bishwas from IIT Kanpur. Now it is accepted that India was the first to make this metal zinc, which is, by the way, also called as Rasaka. Rasa, in our literature, is referred to mercury, and while processing zinc, it appears to take the shade of mercury, so that's why it's called a Rasaka. By the distillation process, as practiced for the other metal, the ancient Persians tried in vain to reduce zinc oxide in an open furnace. Obviously, why? Because of its low property in the open furnace, if it is reduced, the zinc vapors would immediately fly in the air, and it would be a tough job to collect those zinc vapors, condense them back to the solid or a liquid form. When the reduced zinc vapor quickly reacted with the air to give back white dust or zinc oxide, the Indians empirically discovered the art of closed retort reduction and condensation of zinc vapor in reducing atmosphere. This closed retort reduction is an indigenous improvisation, and this also shows that the scientific or engineering practices were not dogmatic. Otherwise, we would not have had this process of refining zinc at a much later period. Of course, in the Vedic literature, you do not have any reference to zinc. That is quite equivocal. Even people who refer to the verse from the Yajurveda, Hiranyam chame, Ayash chame, Sisam chame, Trapush chame, Shyamam chame, Loham chame, you do not have any reference to zinc, and of course not reference to mercury also. So why I'm citing this is to say that how knowledge evolved over a period of time, and this evolution would not have been possible had our forefathers been strictly dogmatic. The ancient zinc ore mine at Jhawar, 30 kilometers from southwest of Udaipur, has revealed C14 dates of timber such as 430 plus or minus 100 and 380 plus or minus 50 before the Common Era. Lays to the rest the argument of Chinese giving us the knowledge about the zinc refining, and subsequent papers after A.K. Bishwas and few papers before A.K. Bishwas also lays credence to this point. This is about the terminology, the linguistic aspect of the zinc, because copper, needless to say, again, this periodification of history as Stone Age, then Metal Age, and when it comes to the Metal Age from copper, the Archaeological Survey of India director sitting here, but this periodization, whether it is applicable to Indian context or not, is a larger question, which I guess should be debated in a serious way. Just because in Europe, it so happened that they discovered the tools pertaining to different periods. Say Stone Age, then you had the copper, then the bronze, and then the iron. The same thing, whether it is applicable to India or not, is a bigger question. The one point in case is when it comes to southern India. there are archaeologists and historians who believe that the southern India directly came to Iron Age without having any copper or the Bronze Age. This is actually not tenable. It's true that it might be even true that copper tools were not excavated or they are yet to be excavated, but saying that the South India bypassed the copper and the Bronze Age and directly came to Iron Age is again a fallacy which we need to bust. The other theory which goes to also support that you had this Aryan invasion and then the settlers of the northern Indus Valley civilization, that plain came down to the south, so they experienced the copper and the Bronze Age, and subsequently when they came to South India, they brought the Iron Age. So this is how they show the continuity, but these are all urban folklore, which I think has somehow crept in the academic literature also, have to be really busted. And I think forums like this should be taking up this in a much more serious manner. When it comes to zinc, yes, as I said, it's a closed retort distillation process done in a very in a closed system. Students of thermodynamics or high school should be able to understand that you have open system, closed system, and you have isolated system. So this is one example of a reaction being carried out in a closed system, where what you do is you have a system something like this. You're looking at a cross section. Part of it is below the ground, part of it is above the ground, and you stuff a pot completely with the zinc ore and the material required to reduce it on the top pot. Okay, and then there's a perforation, and the top pot is inverted. There is a perforation at the bottom, and this perforation would be, after that it is being heated from the top, at a particular temperature, the zinc metal would get reduced from its respective oxide or zinc sulfide. Normally, zinc blende is what is more seen as an ore for zinc. So that would get reduced from zinc with its positive oxidation state to a zero oxidation state. And very quickly, by the action of gravity, that the molten metal would be collected at the bottom flask, which is having also a temperature gradient. The top retort is heated up, and then the bottom flask is having a temperature lower than the room temperature also. So the metal would get condensed into liquid form and collected in the bottom retort. And after the 2 or 3 days, when the temperature is subsided, the ground is dug and the bottom pot is retrieved, where the pure zinc metal is achieved. These are some of the archaeological remains that people have found at the Jawar mines area, which goes to prove this fact. I'll stop with this. This is, even whether we like it or not, even today we would crave for the first world endorsement or the developed countries' endorsement to our achievements. So here is one statement where the lines that I've underlined. The scale of production was Jawar was enormous. The many hundreds of thousands of tons of debris suggest production of many tens of thousands of tons of zinc. And secondly, they have now led to the debate that I was telling you, that two very remarkable radiocarbon dates from the timbers in the ancient Jawarmala mines. These are improved after A.K. Biswas's paper. They are 2120 plus or minus 60 before present, which show that they are the earliest dated zinc mines in the world. So at present, the remains at Jawar are the earliest known center of zinc production on an industrial scale. This is the recent report from the Indian Bureau of Mines. If you see the table 20, India doesn't feature anywhere. These are the world reserves of zinc. India doesn't feature in anywhere in this list. Okay. Whereas if you see the table 22, you see India as the 5th large producer of zinc. So had it not been for the continuous engagement with the zinc refining technology, without even featuring in the table 20, it's not a intuitive task to feature in the table 22, and it is placed as the 5th largest producer of zinc. So roadmap ahead for 2047, there are a lot of scopes from making it from position 5 to the higher positions. And that's one key takeaway from the engaging with the zinc. So I would like to stop here and continue with the panel discussion as per the moderator's suggestion. And I thank you for your patience.